Hi, I'm Razel. I create workout tutorials and full-length workouts for women in their over 40s and almost 40s like myself. It's a specific type of exercise. It involves resistance training at home, but even more than that, this is different from what you see online a lot. It's not intense. It's about a much slower paced workout with chill music. If that sounds like something you've always wanted and haven't been able to find, please come on over to my website at inspirefulwomen.com. Let's get into position for the bench bent over row. Take your dumbbell in one hand, put your other hand and your knee opposite the dumbbell onto a bench. For your hand position, keep the elbow unlocked. You don't want to lock out the elbow. It puts a lot of stress on your elbow joint. If you have any discomfort with the bend here at your wrist, you can use a fist instead, or you can also put like a small kitchen towel underneath just this part of the palm of your hand. And what that will do is create less of an angle on the wrist. And I find that much more comfortable myself. So you can do that. The other dumbbell will just be hanging straight down. And then the knee that's gonna be on, or the leg that's gonna be on the ground here, it's a little bit of a game figuring out the best positioning for you. So you'll have to find that out. But basically, what you want to do is create a position where you can keep a neutral spine. So you're going to gently draw your abdomen into your, you're going to gently draw your abs into your spine. You're going to retract your shoulder blades, have a nice broad chest. I'll show that to you from the front in a minute. But the main thing here to note is that you want to have a nice neutral spine. If you look at my back, so it'll kind of seem like your butt's sticking out a little bit in this position. There's a little curve here in the lumbar that should be there, but we don't want to be super extended or bent like this. So pull your belly button into your spine to have that neutral spine. This leg here, whatever's more comfortable, if you have it a little bit more in line like I do, is fine. Or you can also bring the leg back a little bit. Do you see how it's kind of going back as long as you keep a little bend in your knee? If that feels more comfortable, that's fine. You can also bring it out a little bit if that's more comfortable. You just got to play with it a little bit. So here we are in position. And then all you're going to do, the movement is an arc. So we're not pulling our arm directly straight up. We're thinking about moving the dumbbell up and behind us in an arc so that the dumbbell ends around in line with our hip. Do you see that there? So you're going to pull up but also back. I almost have to think more about pulling back first and then up as being more secondary. At the same time that you're doing this, you also want to think about pulling your elbow in, your arm in towards your body, really pulling inwards. And remember, where you should be feeling it when you do this is in here, this whole side of your back. As you do the movement, try to think about that muscle pulling the arm backwards. So try to actively think about that muscle. It's kind of a small contraction. It feels like there's not a lot of movement in the muscle, so that's why I feel like it's a little bit hard to get the muscle-mind connection. But just work on that, feeling that muscle right here on the outside of your back, feeling it contract, and keeping the path of the dumbbell in an arc where it ends up by your hip. Now your elbow will bend. As you see, mine does bend. How much it bends is variable. There's no rule. What I can tell you is that the goal is to feel this muscle back here contracting. So I've seen a lot of people bend their elbow more to like 90 degrees. So they're here and do you see how much my elbow is bent? That can be fine if you're feeling it in the right place. For me, for whatever reason, when I do that, I don't feel it as well in my lats, and I kind of feel like I start tweaking my back. So I found that I need to keep my elbow a little straighter. Do you see how mine is right now? So that's what works for me. But either of those is fine, whatever makes you feel it better. Let me show you from the front now. the bench bent over row from the front now. So there's a few things I can show you that I couldn't show you from the other angle. So same positioning here. So I'm just going to show you a few other things. When you're on the bench, one thing that's really important is to be able to have your shoulders here and your hips level with the ground. So what I mean by that is not like this or not like this. So a couple things that affect that are the height of the bench. That's really the main one. So what that means is if the bench is too low or if it's too high, you kind of have to adjust. Ideally, you want to get a good bench. This particular bench is actually just a little too high for my height. So what that means is that I have to bend this elbow a little bit more in order to keep my shoulders level. If I straighten it, I start tilting downhill here this way. So you might need a mirror in order to see that, but that's an important part of the movement. The other thing is, if you do end up deciding to take your foot backwards because it feels more comfortable to you, it's going to be a little hard to see, but there's a certain point. Let me just show you standing here. There's a certain point when you take a leg back that your whole torso starts rotating back. Do you see how? So I can kind of stick my leg back a little, but my torso still straight to the front. Does that make sense? But if I go back any farther, I can't, like my whole torso has to start going with it. So what you don't want is that rotation. You want to keep your hips squared to the front as well as the levelness. So just keep that in mind too. If your foot goes back or out or whatever, make sure that your pelvis, your hip bones are still straight to the front, okay? Now, like I said, for me, I like my leg being in a little closer. One thing that you also want to do, and I'm going to show this to you now, as you come up, you need to be able to pull your elbow in towards your torso versus kind of just letting it be out here, because that's one of the functions of the lats, right, is pulling the arm close to the body. Now, because we're already starting in a position where the arm is close to the body, you can't really pull it in like for reals much more. It's not like going to move over several inches. But what you can think about doing, which made a huge difference for me in actually feeling the muscle working, is pulling, like think about pulling inward. Even though it can't move anymore, just the sensation of trying to pull will make that lat contract. And that's when I really started noticing an effective contraction, okay? So let me do a few for you now. One last thing I just did want to point out is that all the movement is coming here from the arm only. So your torso here, your spine, none of it is moving. I'll show you a few things in the common mistakes, but only the arm is moving. Everything else is very still and stationary. Thanks for being with me today, ladies. If you enjoy my teaching style, you feel like you're learning useful things, you might want to come on over to my website at inspirefulwomen.com. Over there, what you'll find is additional information, things that teach you the what and the why, like why are we working the muscles we're working, how do we use them in everyday life, common mistakes that we make with movements, how to keep our bodies safe as we do resistance training, as well as full-length workouts with that chill music I was talking about. So I hope to see you over at inspirefulwomen.com.